I'm Amelia, 28, and I just walked into my childhood home to find my entire family sitting in perfect formation around the living room like they're staging an intervention. My husband David is there too, looking like he's about to throw up, and my sister Emily is practically glowing with this weird, victorious smile that makes my skin crawl. "Daughter, sit down. We need to talk," my father says, gesturing to the single empty chair they've positioned directly in the center of the room. Now, if you're watching this thinking, "Oh no, poor Amelia is about to get blindsided," let me stop you right there. I know exactly what this is about. I've known for weeks. But here's the thing about being the responsible daughter your whole life. People assume you're naive, not strategic. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt underestimated by your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. See, growing up, Emily and I were like two sides of a very unbalanced coin. I was the one who got perfect grades, worked part-time jobs to help with family expenses, and never caused drama. Emily? She was the baby, the creative one, the free spirit who could do no wrong even when she was doing everything wrong. When Emily failed math in high school, I tutored her for 3 months until she passed. When she crashed Dad's car at 17, I lent her my savings to help cover the insurance deductible. When she needed a co-signer for her apartment because her credit was trash, guess who stepped up? That would be me, Saint Amelia, patron saint of cleaning up other people's messes. But Emily never saw it as helping. She saw it as me showing off, being the golden child, making her look bad. The irony? I was never Mom and Dad's favorite. That honor belonged to their precious baby girl. I was just the dependable one, which in family terms means the one who gets taken for granted. The pattern was always the same. Emily would create chaos. I would fix it. And then somehow I'd end up being the villain for making her feel inferior. According to family logic, my success was really just another way of being mean to my sister. Fast forward to last year when I married David. Sweet, hardworking David who managed a small accounting firm and drove a sensible Honda Civic. Not Emily's usual type at all. She typically went for the bad boy artists and musicians who looked good in photos but couldn't hold down a job. But something changed at our wedding. I caught Emily staring at David during our first dance with this strange expression I'd never seen before. Not happiness for her sister, not even her usual boredom with family events. Something hungrier. That should have been my first red flag, but you know what they say about hindsight. The thing about Emily is that she's never wanted anything that belonged to her. She only wants things that belong to other people. My toys when we were kids, my friends in high school, my college boyfriend. Though thankfully that one didn't work out anyway since he turned out to be a complete loser. But David? David was different. David was mine in a way that mattered. We met at a coffee shop where I was grading papers. I taught 3rd grade at the time, and he was reviewing client files. He struck up a conversation about the stack of arithmetic worksheets I was correcting, and somehow we ended up talking for 2 hours about everything from educational policy to his dream of starting his own firm. David wasn't flashy or dramatic. He brought me coffee every morning for 3 months before he finally asked me out. He remembered that I liked 2 sugars, no cream. He listened when I complained about difficult parents and budget cuts. He made me feel valued for who I was, not what I could do for him. When I brought him home for the first time, Mom and Dad were politely impressed. A responsible man with a stable career who clearly adored their daughter? Check all the boxes. Even Emily seemed to approve, which honestly surprised me because she usually found my choices boring. "He's actually cute," she said that night as we cleaned up dishes. I was expecting some nerdy accountant stereotype, but he's got those gorgeous green eyes. I should have paid attention to the way she said, gorgeous, like she was cataloging his features for future reference. But apparently, I was too busy being a trusting wife to notice my sister mentally undressing my husband. After we got married, family dinners became this weird dance where Emily would make increasingly obvious attempts to get David's attention. Nothing you could call out directly, just lingering hugs, compliments about his shirt, asking his opinion on things she'd never cared about before. "David, you're so smart about money. Can you look at my budget and tell me where I'm going wrong? David, I need a man's perspective on this guy I'm dating. What do you think? David, you and Amelia are so lucky to have found each other. I hope I find someone as wonderful as you someday." I mentioned it to David once, carefully, not wanting to sound paranoid or jealous. "Has Emily been acting weird around you lately?" He laughed it off. "She's just being friendly. I think she's happy you found someone who treats you well." And maybe that's what I wanted to believe too, because the alternative, that my baby sister was systematically targeting my husband, was too ugly to consider. But Emily had always been a collector of other people's things, and now I was starting to realize that David might just be her next acquisition. The real problem wasn't even David, though. The real problem was that our family had spent 28 years teaching Emily that she deserved everything she wanted, and teaching me that my job was to make sure she got it. That was about to become a very expensive lesson for all of them. 3 months ago, I started noticing small changes in David's behavior. Nothing dramatic, just little shifts that felt off. He began working late more frequently, citing new client demands that required evening meetings. His phone, which used to sit casually on kitchen counters and coffee tables, became permanently attached to his person. When it buzzed during dinner, he'd glance at it with this quick, almost guilty expression before flipping it face down. "Everything okay at work?" I'd ask, and he'd nod too quickly. "Just busy season stuff. You know how it is." Except I did know how it was, and this wasn't it. David's accounting firm was small, focused mainly on local businesses and individual tax returns. They didn't have the kind of high-stakes clients that required emergency weekend consultations. Then there were the family dinners. Emily started missing them regularly, always with elaborate excuses about art gallery openings or dates with mysterious men she never quite seemed to bring around. But David would get these weird text messages during dinner that made him smile in a way that had nothing to do with quarterly reports. I'm not naturally suspicious. I've always been the trusting type, maybe to a fault. But 28 years of watching Emily operate had taught me to recognize the signs of her plotting something. The breakthrough came when I decided to do something I'd never done before. Actually investigate instead of just worrying quietly. See, David had gotten careless with his digital footprint. Not sloppy enough to leave obvious evidence, but careless enough for someone who knew where to look. I discovered deleted text message threads that he'd forgotten were backed up to our shared cloud account. Messages that went back months, starting innocent but becoming increasingly intimate. Photos they'd sent each other. Plans for secret meetups while I was at work. That night, I sat in our bedroom staring at the evidence on my laptop screen, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. But instead of the devastation I expected, I felt something else entirely: clarity. For the first time in my life, I was seeing my family's true dynamics with perfect 20/20 vision. Emily wanting what I had, David being weak enough to give it to her, my parents preparing to sacrifice me to keep their precious baby happy. But here's what none of them had bothered to consider. Saint Amelia had been quietly building her own life. While they'd been taking my dependability for granted, I'd been taking law classes at night. While they'd assumed I'd always be there to fix everyone's messes, I'd been getting my teaching credentials upgraded and applying for better positions in other school districts. While they'd been planning their betrayal, I'd been planning my exit. 3 weeks ago, I'd accepted a position at a private school in Seattle. The job came with a significant raise, full benefits, and a signing bonus. I hadn't told anyone yet because I wanted to surprise David with the good news. Now I had different plans for that information. I made copies of everything: recovered messages, deleted photos, financial records showing David using our joint account for suspicious purchases that lined up perfectly with Emily's new wardrobe. Then I called the law firm where I'd been taking paralegal classes. Turns out, when you've been married for less than 2 years and you can prove adultery, you have a lot more options than most people realize. Especially when you've been very, very careful about keeping certain assets in your name only. 2 weeks ago, I finally saw them together. I told David I was having dinner with my college roommate Sarah, but instead I parked across from Emily's apartment building and waited. Sure enough, at 6:30 p.m., David's Honda pulled up to the curb. He sat in the car for a moment before getting out, running his hand through his hair the way he does when he's nervous. Then Emily appeared in her doorway wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, and the way she smiled at him made my chest tight. But not heartbroken tight, angry tight. They didn't go far, just to Romano's, the little Italian place where David and I had our third date. I watched through the window as Emily leaned across the table, touching his hand while she talked. David was completely captivated, hanging on her every word like she was revealing the secrets of the universe instead of probably complaining about her latest drama. I took pictures. Not for evidence, I already had plenty of that, but because I wanted to remember this moment. The moment I stopped being the family victim and started being something else entirely. On the drive home, I called my lawyer. I want to accelerate our timeline, I told him, and I want to add something to the documents. The beauty of being married to an accountant is that David had always handled our finances. He'd set up our joint accounts, managed our investments, dealt with all the paperwork. He was so proud of his financial planning skills that he'd insisted on taking care of everything. What David didn't realize is that being married to a third-grade teacher means being married to someone who reads everything very, very carefully, especially contracts and legal documents. All those papers he'd asked me to sign over the past 2 years, the ones he'd explained as just standard stuff for tax purposes, I'd read every single word, and I'd been very strategic about which ones I actually signed versus which ones I modified slightly before signing. Turns out, my teacher's salary might be modest, but my grandmother's life insurance policy that I'd inherited and invested wisely was anything but modest. The same inheritance I'd used to help David start his business, which, according to our carefully crafted paperwork, made me the primary stakeholder in his accounting firm. David thought he owned his business. Emily thought she was stealing someone else's husband. My family thought they were dealing with the same pushover daughter who'd always prioritized everyone else's happiness. They were all wrong. Last week, I handed in my resignation at school, effective immediately with the Seattle job starting next month. I hired movers to pack everything that mattered to me, and I called my parents to arrange a family meeting. Just something I wanted to discuss with everyone, I told Mom, who was thrilled that I was finally taking initiative in planning family gatherings. Emily will be so excited, she said. She's been wanting to spend more time with you and David. I'm sure she has, I thought, watching David in the kitchen making his morning coffee, completely oblivious to the storm about to hit. Will Sunday work? Around 2 p.m.? Perfect, sweetheart. Should I make my special pot roast? Don't go to any trouble, Mom. This won't take long. The week before the confrontation was like living in a movie where I was the only one who'd read the script. David continued his charade of working late and taking mysterious phone calls. Emily kept texting me about girl time and asking when we could double date with my husband and her mystery boyfriend. My parents called to check on wedding anniversary plans that were apparently being discussed behind my back. Meanwhile, I was orchestrating my own version of family planning. I spent Monday morning at the bank, transferring assets and closing joint accounts. David's name came off everything except his business loan, which, according to our partnership agreement, he'd now be personally responsible for without my financial backing. Tuesday, I met with a real estate attorney about the house. Turns out, when you're the primary income earner and your spouse's business is heavily dependent on your investment, you have significant leverage in property negotiations, especially when said spouse has been documenting his own adultery via text message. Wednesday, I had lunch with my principal and explained the situation. She was incredibly understanding and agreed to expedite my resignation paperwork while providing glowing references for my new position. I'm sorry this is happening to you, she said, squeezing my hand across the conference table. Actually, I replied, I think it's the best thing that could have happened. I just didn't know it yet. Thursday, I finalized the divorce papers. My lawyer had done exactly what I'd requested. Everything neat, legal, and absolutely devastating for anyone who'd assumed I'd quietly fade away. Friday, I packed my car with everything that mattered. Photo albums from before David, my grandmother's jewelry, the teaching awards I'd earned, and my laptop containing 2 years' worth of carefully documented evidence. But the most important thing I packed was something nobody else would have noticed. The small leather notebook where I'd been recording every lie, every excuse, every family conversation where someone had dismissed my feelings or minimized my worth. It was during one of my regular coffee dates with our family friend Margaret that I learned the final pieces of their plan. Sweet Margaret, who'd known our family for decades and had no idea she was revealing the conspiracy. She casually mentioned how my parents had been asking her advice about delicate family situations and whether I seemed emotionally stable enough to handle difficult news. 28 years of being everyone's afterthought had taught me to pay attention to details that others missed. I'd been keeping score without even realizing it. The notebook contained patterns that would have made my psychology professor proud. Emily's escalating boundary violations, David's decreasing emotional availability, my parents' increasing pressure for me to understand Emily's needs and support David's business growth. It was like watching a coordinated campaign designed to isolate me from my own life. Sunday morning, I woke up feeling calmer than I had in months. David was already gone, probably meeting Emily for brunch before their performance this afternoon. I made myself a perfect cup of coffee, using the expensive beans I'd always saved for special occasions, and sat on our back porch watching the sunrise. In a few hours, my family would gather to deliver what they thought would be devastating news to their reliable, predictable Amelia. Instead, they were about to meet someone they'd never seen before, the woman who'd been quietly building her own empire while they'd been planning her demise. I checked my watch. Time to get ready for the show. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 2 p.m., carrying my purse and wearing the navy blue dress David had bought me for our anniversary. If this was going to be a performance, I wanted to look the part of the unsuspecting wife. Everyone was already assembled in the living room like they were posing for a very awkward family portrait. Mom and Dad on the couch, Emily perched on the armchair looking nervous but excited, and David standing near the window like he was preparing to bolt. The positioning was strategic. I could see that immediately. They'd arranged themselves so I'd be surrounded, with no easy exit and maximum emotional impact when they delivered their news. "Hi, everyone," I said cheerfully, settling into the chair they'd obviously selected for me. Thanks for gathering on such short notice. My father cleared his throat. Actually, sweetheart, we're the ones who needed to talk to you. Oh? I tilted my head, the picture of innocent curiosity. Emily shifted in her seat, practically vibrating with anticipation. David looked like he was going to be sick. There's something you need to know, Mom began, using her gentle voice. About David and Emily. I nodded encouragingly. I'm listening. Dad took over, his tone becoming more serious. They've developed feelings for each other. Real feelings. And we think it's best if you hear this from family rather than finding out some other way. Mom finished. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds. Then I did something that clearly wasn't in their script. I laughed. Not a bitter, hysterical laugh. A genuinely amused one. Is that what this is about? I asked, looking around the room at their confused faces. Emily spoke for the first time. Amelia, I know this is hard to understand, but sometimes love just happens. David and I never meant for this to occur, but we can't deny what we're feeling. She'd obviously been rehearsing that speech. Dad leaned forward with the expression he used to wear when explaining why Emily's latest crisis was actually my responsibility to solve. We've talked about this as a family, and we think Emily and David are better suited for each other. Emily needs someone steady, and David needs someone who can appreciate his artistic side. Since when does David have an artistic side? I wondered. Unless you count creative accounting. We just want what's best for everyone, Mom added softly. Emily has been so unhappy lately, and you've always been the strong one. We know you'll understand. There it was. The family mission statement. Amelia will understand. Amelia will sacrifice. Amelia will make everyone else's happiness possible. I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 manila envelopes, placing them calmly on the coffee table. Here's the thing, I said, my voice still light and conversational. I know all about your feelings. I've known for weeks. David finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You knew? I know about the deleted messages you forgot were backed up, the secret dinners, the photos. I know about the apartment Emily toured last week that's conveniently close to David's office. Emily's face had gone pale. How did you? Because unlike all of you, I pay attention to details. I gestured to the envelopes. I also pay attention to legal documents, financial statements, and property law. I opened the first envelope and spread the divorce papers across the coffee table like I was dealing cards. These are divorce papers, David, already signed, by me, 3 days ago. The second envelope contained financial documents, and these show that as of yesterday morning, you no longer have access to our joint accounts, our house, or the investment funds that have been supporting your business for the past 2 years. The room had gone completely silent. See, here's what you all missed in your little planning sessions, I continued, standing up and smoothing my dress. You assumed I was the same person I've always been. The helpful daughter, the supportive wife, the pushover sister. I picked up my purse and headed for the door. But I grew up, and I got tired of being everyone's backup plan. Emily finally found her voice. Amelia, wait. You can't just what, Emily? Take control of my own life? I paused at the doorway and looked back at my family, my former family. By the way, I start a new job in Seattle next month. I'll be gone by Friday. David, you'll find my forwarding address in the paperwork. As I walked to my car, I could hear Emily crying and my parents trying to comfort her, because God forbid Emily face consequences for her actions. David had followed me outside. Amelia, please, we need to talk about this. I turned to face him one last time. No, David, we really don't. You made your choice. I'm making mine. I got in my car and drove away, leaving them to sort out the mess they'd created. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, and it felt absolutely perfect. 3 days later, I'm in my new apartment in Seattle, unpacking boxes while my phone buzzes nonstop with calls from numbers I refuse to answer. The view from my living room window shows the Puget Sound, and honestly, it's a significant upgrade from staring at David's collection of motivational posters about fiscal responsibility. The apartment itself is a revelation. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, and a kitchen island I can actually cook on instead of David's efficiency-obsessed galley setup. I'd found it online 2 months ago and put down a deposit before I'd even told anyone I was leaving. Planning ahead. Apparently, it's my superpower. My phone rings again. This time it's Mom, so I decide to answer. Amelia, thank God, she says, her voice strained. We need to talk about what happened on Sunday. You left so abruptly, and poor Emily has been crying ever since. Poor Emily, I repeat, setting down the box of books I'm unpacking. Has she now? This isn't like you, sweetheart. You're usually so understanding, so forgiving. Your father thinks maybe you need some time to process, but Emily is heartbroken about how this affects your relationship. I pause in the middle of arranging my bookshelf. Mom, let me ask you something. In all these conversations about Emily's feelings, has anyone mentioned mine? Silence. Because I'm curious. When exactly was my heartbreak going to factor into this family discussion? Now, Amelia, you're being dramatic. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like the only person whose feelings don't matter in this situation is the actual wife. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to choose between your family's comfort and your own self-respect. The truth is, I'd been expecting this call. Just like I'd been expecting the 17 text messages from Emily explaining how she never meant for this to happen, and how she hopes we can work through this as sisters. Just like I'd been expecting David's increasingly desperate voicemails promising to end things with Emily and begging for a chance to explain. What none of them had expected was for me to be 3 states away, completely unreachable, and absolutely unbothered by their crisis. Where are you staying? Mom asks, switching tactics. Your father wants to drive up and talk to you in person. I'm sure he does, but that's not happening. Amelia, we're family. We can work through this. Were we family when you all sat down to plan how to break my marriage apart? Were we family when Emily decided my husband looked like a fun new toy? Were we family when David was sneaking around behind my back for months? Another pause, longer this time. We just want what's best for everyone, she says finally. No, Mom. You want what's easiest for everyone. There's a difference. I hang up and turn off my phone. Outside my window, Seattle is bustling with people living their own lives, pursuing their own goals, making their own choices. It's refreshing to be surrounded by strangers who don't expect me to sacrifice my happiness for their convenience. That evening, I video chat with my new colleagues at the private school. They're excited about the innovative teaching methods I've proposed, and we spend an hour discussing curriculum development. When was the last time anyone in my family asked about my professional interests? I honestly can't remember. By the end of the week, David has escalated to showing up at places he thinks I might be. Unfortunately for him, I'm bobbing 200 miles away drinking excellent coffee and exploring Pike Place Market. My phone has 43 missed calls from him. I've listened to exactly 0 of them. The voicemails, according to the transcripts my phone helpfully provides, follow a predictable pattern. First came the explanations. How Emily had pursued him, how he'd tried to resist, how it just happened. Classic cheater logic. Make yourself the victim of your own choices. Then came the promises. He'd end things with Emily immediately. He'd go to counseling. He'd do whatever it takes to win me back. He'd even move to Seattle if that's what I wanted. Now he's in the desperate bargaining phase. Messages about our good memories, our shared dreams, how much he loves me, and how he can't live without me. It's almost adorable how little he understands about consequences. This morning, he tried a different approach. Instead of calling me, he called the school where I used to work, trying to get my forwarding address. My former principal, bless her heart, told him she had no idea where I'd gone. She also called to warn me, which is how I learned that David has apparently taken a week off work to focus on saving his marriage. Too bad his marriage ended the moment he decided my sister was more interesting than his wife. I'm having lunch at a waterfront restaurant when my phone rings with an unknown Seattle number. Against my better judgment, I answer. Amelia, thank God. It's David. Please don't hang up. I take a sip of my wine, a lovely Pinot Grigio that costs more per glass than David usually spends on an entire bottle. How did you get this number? I hired a private investigator. Amelia, we need to talk. I'm flying out there tonight. The audacity is breathtaking. You hired a private investigator to stalk your ex-wife? You're not my ex-wife. We're still married. Only until the paperwork is finalized. Which should be any day now since you've been so cooperative about signing everything. I haven't signed anything. I pause, my wine glass halfway to my lips. Excuse me? I'm not signing the divorce papers. I'm fighting this, Amelia. I'm fighting for us. Now I do laugh, and the couple at the next table glances over curiously. David, you can fight all you want. You committed adultery with my sister. In most states, including Washington, where I now reside, that makes the divorce pretty straightforward. But I love you. You have a funny way of showing it. Emily was a mistake. A huge mistake. I was confused, flattered by the attention, and I made terrible choices. But it doesn't change how I feel about you. I signal the waiter for another glass of wine. This conversation calls for alcohol. David, let me explain something to you. When you decided to sleep with my sister, you didn't just cheat on me. You participated in a family conspiracy designed to humiliate me. You sat in secret planning sessions about how to break the news. You practiced speeches about how love can't be controlled. Silence on his end. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the family meetings? About Emily asking Mom and Dad for advice on how to steal someone's husband? About Dad researching divorce law to make sure Emily wouldn't be held legally responsible for adultery? How did you? Because unlike you, David, I pay attention. And unlike Emily, I don't assume everyone around me is stupid. What David doesn't know, what none of them know, is that I've been documenting everything for months. Not just the affair, but the entire family dynamic that made it possible. I have recordings of conversations with family friend Margaret, where my parents discussed how Emily deserves someone who really appreciates her creativity, and how David might be wasted on someone as practical as Amelia. I have text message screenshots of Emily asking our cousin for advice on how to know if a man is happy in his marriage, and whether some people are just better suited for each other. I have financial records showing how David used our joint savings to buy Emily gifts, including the red dress I saw her wearing at Romano's. Most damning of all, I have video footage from the security camera David suggested we install in our kitchen for security reasons. Hours of Emily visiting our house while I was at work, going through my personal belongings, and yes, being very cozy with my husband in what used to be our shared space. The camera was David's idea, actually. He'd suggested it after a neighbor's house was burglarized. He just forgot that security cameras record everyone, including cheating husbands and their accomplices. Right now, Emily is discovering that getting what she wanted isn't quite the fairy tale she'd imagined. According to my mother's increasingly frantic calls, which I've started answering just for entertainment value, Emily had expected to step seamlessly into my life. She'd pictured romantic dinners in my house, sleeping in my bed, playing house with David while everyone celebrated their great love story. Instead, David is broke. See, Emily never bothered to ask about our financial arrangements. She assumed that because David owned an accounting firm, he must be wealthy. She didn't know that his business was entirely dependent on the investment capital I'd inherited from my grandmother. She also didn't know that I'd been gradually withdrawing that support over the past month, transferring assets and closing accounts while David was too distracted by his affair to notice. The house, in my name, thanks to a carefully crafted prenuptial agreement David had signed without reading thoroughly. You'd think an accountant would be more careful about financial documents, but apparently love makes people careless about paperwork. The car payments? Automatically deducted from an account that no longer exists. The business loan? Now David's personal responsibility, with no co-signer and no financial backing. Emily thought she was winning a prize. Instead, she got a cheating ex-husband with a failing business and a mountain of debt. My phone buzzes with a text from my cousin Rachel, who's been keeping me updated on the family drama. Emily's moving back in with your parents. David's been sleeping on their couch for 3 days. Your mom asked me if I thought you'd consider family counseling. I respond, tell Mom I'm considering getting a restraining order if they don't stop calling. That afternoon, I receive an email from David's business partner, someone I've known for years. He's professional, but direct. David missed 3 client meetings this week, and they're concerned about the firm's stability. Would I be willing to discuss the transition of my investment? I forward the email to my lawyer with a note. Please handle this. I want clean separation from all of David's business obligations. 20 minutes later, my lawyer calls back. This is more serious than we initially thought. His business partner is essentially asking if you're planning to bankrupt the firm by withdrawing your support. I'm not planning to do anything except protect my assets. If David can't run his business without my money, that's his problem to solve. The partner is offering to buy out your stake at a significant premium. He wants to preserve the firm. I consider this while watching ferries cross the sound outside my window. Counteroffer. I'll sell, but I want first right of refusal if they ever decide to sell the firm itself. And I want all client contracts that mention my name or my investment to be voided immediately. You're essentially ensuring David has no claim to your contributions. That's exactly what I'm ensuring. By evening, I have a cashier's check for more money than David made in 2 years. His business partner was motivated. Apparently, David's meltdown is affecting their reputation with clients. I deposit the check in my new Seattle bank account and make a mental note to send Emily a thank you card. Her selfishness just made me financially independent. 2 weeks into my Seattle life, I'm settling into routines that feel more authentic than anything I experienced in my marriage. Morning coffee at the local cafe where the barista knows my order. Evening walks through Pike Place Market. Weekend hiking trips to places with names like Snoqualmie Falls and Mount Rainier. I'm also making friends. Real friends who met me as Amelia the teacher, not Amelia the wife or Amelia the responsible daughter. There's Sarah from the yoga studio, Marcus who teaches at the school with me, and Janet, my neighbor, who's been showing me the best spots for weekend brunches. None of them know about my recent divorce or my family drama. To them, I'm just a woman who moved to Seattle for a fresh start. It's refreshing to be seen as a whole person instead of as someone's supporting character. The family calls have decreased but haven't stopped entirely. Last night, Dad tried a new approach. Your mother's been crying every day since you left, he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. She doesn't understand how you could just disappear from our lives like this. I didn't disappear, Dad. I moved. People do that. Not without telling their families where they're going. I told you where I was going. I said I was leaving for Seattle. The fact that you didn't take me seriously isn't my problem. But you didn't give us a chance to work things out. Emily made a mistake, but she's family. David made a mistake, but marriage is about forgiveness. I pause in the middle of watering my new plants. Succulents that can survive even if I forget about them sometimes. Unlike the high-maintenance orchids David always insisted we keep. Dad, let me ask you something. If I had cheated on David with Emily's boyfriend, would you be calling him right now asking him to forgive me for the sake of family? Long pause. That's different. How? You're not the type of person who would do that. Exactly. I'm not the type of person who betrays people I'm supposed to love. So why are you asking me to accept that behavior from people who claim to love me? Because family means working through difficult situations. No, Dad. Family means not creating difficult situations by sleeping with your sister's husband. I hang up before he can respond. The truth is, I'm not angry anymore. Angry would imply that I expected better from them, and I've realized that I was setting myself up for disappointment by expecting them to value me the way I valued them. Emily has always been selfish. David has always been weak. My parents have always prioritized Emily's feelings over mine. I was the only one who changed. I just stopped accepting it. This morning, I received an unexpected visitor at school. David, looking haggard and desperate, somehow convinced the front office that he was my husband and needed to see me urgently. "You can't hide from me forever," he said when I came to the lobby. "I'm not hiding. I'm living. There's a difference. I've been calling you for weeks. And I've been ignoring you for weeks. Some might call that a pattern." He looked around the lobby, taking in the expensive artwork and modern furniture of my new workplace. "This is a nice school. Much nicer than where you used to teach." "Yes, it is. Turns out when you stop accepting whatever scraps people offer you, better opportunities become available. I drove 18 hours to get here, Amelia. The least you can do is hear me out." I checked my watch. "You have 5 minutes." I ended things with Emily completely. "I moved out of your parents' house. I'm in counseling. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm serious about fixing this." "David, you can't fix this. This isn't a problem to be solved. It's a choice you made. You chose Emily over me. You chose deception over honesty. You chose to participate in humiliating me. There's no undoing those choices. But I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me. The wife who made your life convenient, who supported your business, who never questioned your choices. But the actual me? The woman with her own thoughts and feelings and boundaries? You never bothered to get to know her." Security was approaching. Apparently my raised voice had attracted attention. "If you love me," I said quietly, "sign the divorce papers and let me move on with my life." For the first time since this whole mess started, David looked like he finally understood that I was serious. "What if I can't let you go?" he asked. "Then you'll discover that what you can't let go of was never yours to begin with." The final confrontation happened 3 weeks later, and it wasn't with David. Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning, having somehow convinced our cousin Rachel, who'd been close to Emily since childhood and apparently still felt some misguided loyalty to her, to give her my address. I opened the door to find her standing in my hallway, looking smaller and less confident than I'd ever seen her. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. I considered closing the door in her face, but curiosity won. "Come in." She walked into my living room and immediately started crying. Not the dramatic, attention-seeking tears she'd perfected as a child, but genuine, exhausted sobs. "I ruined everything," she said, collapsing onto my couch. "David, our family, your life. I destroyed it all. I poured myself coffee and didn't offer her any." "Yes, you did. I thought if I could just have what you had, I'd finally feel good enough. But David isn't. He's not the man I thought he was when he was with you." "What do you mean?" "He's weak, Amelia. He's needy and clingy, and he keeps talking about how much he misses you. He doesn't want me. He wants you back, and he's settling for him because I'm the closest thing he can get." I sat across from her, studying her face. "And how does that make you feel?" "Like an idiot. Like I threw away my relationship with my sister for a man who doesn't even really want me." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered 28 years of this exact pattern. Emily creating chaos, facing consequences, and expecting me to fix everything. "Emily, can I ask you something? When did you decide you wanted David?" She wiped her nose with her sleeve. "At your wedding? Watching you dance with him, seeing how happy you looked. I wanted that. I wanted someone to look at me the way he looked at you. So you decided to take him. I thought I was falling in love with him. I convinced myself it was fate or destiny or something romantic like that. But it wasn't love. It was envy." She nodded miserably. "I've always been jealous of you. Your grades, your success, how proud mom and dad were of your achievements. Even when they were praising me, I knew it was different. You earned their respect. I just got their indulgence. This was the most honest conversation Emily and I had ever had. So when I got married and looked genuinely happy for the first time in years, you couldn't stand it. I hated it. I hated that you had something I wanted, and I hated that you deserved it more than I did. I leaned back in my chair, processing this admission. Emily, do you understand that David was never the real prize? What do you mean? The prize was the life I built for myself, the respect I earned through my work, the financial security I created through careful planning, the relationship skills I developed by being a decent human being. David was just David, a person who happened to be part of that life. I don't understand. You can't steal someone else's happiness, Emily. You can only steal the things that represent their happiness, and those things are worthless without the foundation that created them. She looked around my apartment, the view, the nice furniture, the evidence of a life well lived. You seem happy here. I am. Happier than I've been in years. Without David? Because I finally stopped waiting for other people to decide what I deserve. We sat in silence for a few minutes while Emily continued crying quietly. Is there any chance you could ever forgive me? She asked finally. I considered the question seriously. I don't know. But Emily, even if I could forgive you, I don't think I could ever trust you again. And without trust, what kind of relationship would we have? So this is it? We're just never going to be sisters again? We were never really sisters, Emily. We were just two people who happened to grow up in the same house. Sisters protect each other. Sisters celebrate each other's successes. Sisters don't systematically try to destroy each other's lives. She stood to leave, looking defeated in a way that might have moved me a few months ago. For what it's worth, she said at the door, I'm proud of you. For the first time ever, you chose yourself over everyone else's feelings. I always thought you were weak, but leaving us took more strength than I'll ever have. After she left, I sat on my balcony watching the water and thinking about forgiveness. Maybe someday I would forgive Emily and David and my parents. But forgiveness would be for my benefit, not theirs. And it wouldn't mean letting them back into my life. Some bridges are meant to be burned. 6 months later, I'm preparing for my first Thanksgiving in Seattle. Instead of driving home to manage family drama and walk on eggshells around everyone's feelings, I'm hosting dinner for my chosen family. Sarah, Marcus, Janet, and a few other friends who've become more supportive in 6 months than my blood relatives were in 28 years. My phone rings while I'm prepping vegetables. It's an unknown number with my hometown area code. Usually I'd let it go to voicemail, but something makes me answer. Amelia, it's Rachel. My cousin sounds hesitant, which is unusual for her. Hey, Rachel, everything okay? I wanted to update you on the family situation. I know you've been avoiding their calls, but I thought you should know what's been happening. I pause in my chopping. I'm listening. David's business partner bought him out completely last month. Apparently, David's been too unreliable to maintain client relationships. He's working for someone else now, much smaller salary. And Emily? Moved to Portland. She's working at an art gallery there, trying to find herself, according to your mom. They broke up months ago. How are mom and dad handling all this? Rachel sighs. Not well. They keep talking about how they lost both daughters and how they don't understand what went wrong. Your mom asked me to call you, actually. She wants to know if you'd consider coming home for Christmas. I look around my apartment, at the life I've built from nothing, at the evidence of choices made for my own happiness rather than everyone else's convenience. Tell mom I already have plans for Christmas. With people who actually appreciate having me around. She's been crying a lot, Amelia. She misses you. Then she should have thought about that before she helped plan my humiliation. After I hang up, I realize something profound. I don't feel guilty about their sadness anymore. Their feelings are no longer my responsibility to manage. At dinner that evening, Janet raises her wine glass for a toast. To second chances and new beginnings. To choosing yourself, Sarah adds. To discovering you're stronger than you ever imagined. Marcus chimes in. We clink glasses, and I feel something I've never experienced before. Complete contentment with my own choices. Later, as my friends help clean up, Sarah asks, do you ever regret it? Walking away from your whole family? I consider the question while loading the dishwasher. No, I regret that it took me so long to realize I deserved better, but walking away? That's the best decision I've ever made. What would you tell someone in a similar situation? That you're not responsible for other people's happiness at the expense of your own? That family is supposed to add to your life, not subtract from it? And that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people experience the consequences of their choices. As my friends leave, hugging me goodbye and making plans for next weekend, I realize something that would have shocked the old Amelia. I am genuinely happy. Not the complicated, conditional happiness I used to feel when everyone else was satisfied. Not the anxious relief of successfully managing everyone's emotions. But pure, uncomplicated joy in my own life. I've built something beautiful here. A career that challenges and fulfills me. Friendships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Financial independence that nobody can take away. A space that reflects my own tastes and choices. If this story resonated with you, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me about a time you had to choose between your family's comfort and your own happiness. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept what everyone else thinks you deserve. David texts me occasionally, usually late at night, usually apologizing or reminiscing about good times we supposedly had. I don't respond anymore. Not out of anger, but because I genuinely have nothing to say to him. He's become irrelevant to my life, which is probably the most devastating outcome he could have imagined. Emily sent me a birthday card last month. Inside, she'd written, "I know you probably won't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that leaving was the best thing that ever happened to you. You look happier in the photos Rachel shows us than you ever looked when you were trying to make us happy." She was right. I had been trying to make them happy for 28 years. Now I'm making myself happy, and the difference is extraordinary. Sometimes people ask if I'm lonely without my family. The truth is, I was lonelier when I was with them than I've ever been on my own. Being surrounded by people who don't value you is infinitely more isolating than being alone with your own worth. I never thought I'd be the woman who walked away from everything familiar to start over. But then again, I never thought I'd be the woman who quietly documented months of betrayal while preparing the perfect counterattack either. Turns out, I was never the passive, accommodating person they all thought I was. I was just someone who hadn't yet learned that her own happiness mattered. Now I know better. And that knowledge has set me free in ways I never could have imagined while I was still trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. I'm Amelia. I'm 28 years old, and for the first time in my life, I'm exactly who I want to be.